Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 268, Making Alliances Work. Have you ever wondered why some opposites attract type relationships really work and others don't? And I'm not just talking about romantic relationships. It's something that's been puzzling me for many years, and later on I'll reveal some insightful advice that was shared with me about 20 years ago. I guess you might imagine I'll only be focusing on introvert-extrovert alliances, as I've spoken about that before. But in order to do this topic justice, I think I need to widen my reflections before narrowing down to that. So that's what you can expect from this episode, some divergence as I explore the nature of alliances and then convergence towards a meaningful conclusion. I want to start with a quick reminder of the distinction between an ally and an alliance. Of course, they share the same root in linguistics, which is to bind or tie together. But the reality is that an ally typically supports unconditionally, whilst an alliance is more strategic. There are many types of alliances, and there are so many reasons why we might benefit from having them, yes, even as introverts. Now, if I were to believe what I read in many introvert groups, you'd think that I'm something of an oddity, as I'm an introvert that doesn't hate people, that doesn't hate extroverts just for doing what they need to do to recharge, and who doesn't only work on my own. I'd go so far as to say that I don't work better on my own most of the time, despite having done just that for a number of years. My brilliant team are evidencing that. And I encourage you to suspend judgment and preconceptions so you can be open to where an alliance might benefit you. After all, contrary to one of the popular myths, identifying as an introvert doesn't mean being an isolate. With so many types of alliances possible, there is bound to be one that works for you if you'll just lower your defences and get out of your own way. So let's have a look at some of those that I've been engaged with. There are those people I form psychological alliances with who are in some way a kindred spirit or maybe an emotional anchor. They may be silent supporters and even energy balancers whose presence doesn't drain me like the energy vampires who leave me depleted in a matter of moments. Those I form psychological alliances with are typically the type of people I intentionally build my reciprocal support network with. We know we can rely on each other for the type of support we've mutually agreed. Next, as a small business owner, I've benefited from strategic or professional alliances. I worked as an associate for my good friend Paul, a fellow introvert, and for my completely bonkers friend Audra, the most out there extrovert I have ever worked with. The thing is, Audra and I recognised our differences, so we were able to complement each other beautifully. And recently, I worked with a couple of introverts to get my first children's book published. Andrea is the stunningly talented illustrator from Slovenia, and Hayley the kind-hearted professional publisher who agreed to my ridiculous deadline. I encourage you to get your copy if you haven't already, as children, parents and teachers alike are full of praise for the storytelling and the lessons. And of course, do remember to leave a review. There's definitely a special kind of magic that happens when professional alliances like that are also with kindred spirits. But it's not always like that, though. Earlier on in my career as a trainer, I worked with Ivan and alongside a couple of others who always chose to give me feedback that I was boring or worse. Yeah, they said dull as I'll leave it there. They said I needed to up my energy to make learning more fun. It still amuses me that some people think larking around is fun for everyone. And lastly, one type that I've really benefited from is the growth-oriented alliance. You'll know that I proudly call myself a lifelong learner. I cannot even begin to think of saying, that's it, I'm finished with developing myself now. This type of alliance is not always comfortable though, as the agreement is to challenge each other and hold up the mirror of feedback so we see an honest reflection. You may remember that I've been a practitioner of learning and development since 1987, so at the time of recording, close to 40 years. My passion for personal development started long before that though, when I won a place on a women's development course sponsored by ESSO. That was a real eye-opener for me and planted the seeds for what was to become my profession and true purpose in life. However, I also knew that I had a lot of my own development to undertake if I was going to succeed in such a visible profession. Once I became established as a learning and development professional, I realised that many of my colleagues were naturally more outgoing, gregarious and entertaining. And as I've already mentioned, many considered my introversion as a flaw that reduced my competence. If you're a regular listener, you'll understand how this fed my insecurities, courtesy of my inner critic, Gladys. That's where I sought out development opportunities and partners that supported, challenged, and necessarily expanded my comfort zone. That's what learning and growth are all about, after all. Even now, I'm at my learning edge as I'm training to qualify as a coaching supervisor. So, these are the 3 alliances I've sought out the most, and through all of them, the advice given to me early in my career has served me well. I wish I could remember who said it, as I'd love to acknowledge them, but here is their nugget. There is no such thing as a personality clash. It's a behaviour clash. These days, when I find myself getting wound up, my blood boiling or my hackles rising, I ask myself, what behaviour am I being exposed to, and what is that triggering in me? In other words, what impact is it having on me? Notice the direction of inquiry though. It's not what are they doing wrong, but what is it triggering in me and why? We need to explore and own our shadow sides, and that's where we often need to be doing the healing or growth work. I think the inability to reflect in this way is at the heart of many personal conflicts that people seem unable to resolve. In my opinion, it's also at the heart of why many introverts say they dislike or even hate extroverts. For instance, we can find an extrovert's need to think out loud and their constant need to initiate small talk as annoying as it breaks our concentration. And they can find the time we take to respond frustrating as it keeps them waiting, and they may consider our reluctance to engage as ignorance. These are simple behaviour differences that when we take time to understand them are not insurmountable. But when they bubble under the surface, unspoken, or are only raised in judgmental terms, they forge divides that are more difficult to navigate. Frustrations increase, tempers flare, and inclusion suffers. Platitudes like, I hear what you say, but, and typical management bollocks like, reach out or drink the Kool-Aid abound. But we might as well be pissing in the wind, as these change nothing. The reality is, we may understand our own world, and frankly, it's our responsibility to do that. But we're unlikely to understand anyone else's unless we intentionally explore them together. The reality is, we may understand our own world, and frankly, it's our responsibility to do just that. But we're unlikely to understand anyone else's unless we intentionally explore them together. And we know how dangerous it is to make assumptions. That's where alliances come in, because at their core, they are about trust, which of course is reciprocal, otherwise it's non-existent, mutual benefit, so a win-win intention and outcome, shared goals, values or interests, and you'll explore and agree those each time. And finally, support through the peaks and valleys, so progress is made no matter how rocky the road. When you forge the right alliance, you'll experience a refreshing honesty, purposeful curiosity, and a meeting of minds rather than sycophantic collusion. So how do you initiate or find your own alliance, and for what reason? I'd start with the end in mind, thank you Stephen Covey, so with that last question. Maybe not why do you want an alliance, as that may keep you playing safe and be too self-oriented, but why you need one. What purpose will it serve in your growth and development, and how will both parties benefit? Because no two alliances are the same, the rules of contracting need to be observed and honoured. As introverts, we're unlikely to be casting our net wide, but rather weaving a strong web. That synergy is such a special thing, and is why I conduct synergy calls with people who are looking to work with me for the whole year. We both need to be sure it's the right alliance. The reality is some alliances may be more shallow, time-bound and situational. This may include some coaching clients, those supported through my short courses, or inside the Introverts round table. Other alliances are deep and long-lasting, like the bond and alliance I form with those I work intensively with on their frustrated to flourishing journey. And I'm pretty sure deep and long-lasting is what we're aiming for with potential life partners, not someone who is the same as us, who colludes with our insecurities and our stuckness, but someone who can hold the space for us to develop in whatever way we need, who can challenge us to be the best version of ourselves and ultimately to grow uncompetitively alongside us in their own special way. And if you find yourself in an alliance that is no longer serving you, extricate yourself with grace and humility. As we know, people are in our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and that is by mutual agreement. So, as I draw this episode to its conclusion, I suggest you do a stocktake or undertake an audit of your life and where you're heading in order to recognise where you would benefit from some form of alliance. Start with the purpose in mind and seek out someone who can hold that space for you and allow you to flourish. It's fair to say that the reason some opposites attract type alliances work is down to attitude and intention, like so much in life really. Because the right alliance won't just support you, it will stretch you, shape you, and help you grow into the version of yourself that you maybe dreamed about but really never imagined possible. Choose wisely, connect deeply, and flourish boldly. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us, and leave a comment, because we know that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
You are listening to an Intentional Media Production podcast.